Most people chase what they think that they want, but the real creative spark comes from knowing what you don't. Today we're exploring how your no's light the way to your true yes. This episode is for anyone who's feeling pulled in so many directions, or you're unsure of what excites you, or you're maybe lost in the noise of others' choices. We're going to talk about why knowing what you reject is just as powerful as knowing what you desire. By the end, you're going to have a clear way to identify your creative don'ts, translate them into actionable wants, and ignite momentum in your work. Your don'ts aren't just limits. They are the map to what really matters. Hello, you lovely, beautiful beings. Welcome back to Muse. My name is Damaris. I'm so happy you're here. I'm really interested in this topic of trying to figure out how we can use the knowing of the things we don't want or don't like in order to really be sure about what we want and be able to step into action in those things that we want and desire. I hope you're having a great start to your week and are ready to take the next steps into your creative journey and finishing off this month, stepping into the version of you that knows you want to be creating, knows maybe the things that you want to create, and just need a little nudge, just need a little encouragement, a little motivation to get into it, to ignite that momentum again. Let's get into today's episode. I've been really fascinated about this concept of how knowing the things that you don't like, that you don't want, that you know isn't your cup of tea can help you to get to the things that you really want, that you really desire, that you are actually looking to make. I think starting from the beginning of why your don'ts actually matter is a key point to understanding why we need to pay attention to what that is for you. Your don'ts reflect your values, your style, and your taste. They act as filters to keep you aligned in the direction that you want to go and how you want to show up in the world. Even though there are certain things that can seem or feel appealing on the surface, it might clash with your authentic creative expression. So being able to recognize your don'ts helps you like calibrating a compass. It points you towards your own personal North Star. There are a couple notes though that I'm not going to fully get into, but I think are important to think about. Values first. Being able to figure out or understand what you value as a creative, as an individual, is so helpful to give you a framework to use when you are trying to figure out what your creative expression actually looks like, to hone in on what your creative expression is. It's the foundation for spotting what doesn't fit. There are energy patterns that you might want to pay attention to as well. These are what help you to feel what is draining and what is exciting you. Your flow tendencies can guide your creative choices. Preferred mediums. There are certain tools, techniques, and formats that you might align with more than others. Acknowledging them will help you to refine and to filter as you go through your creative process. So there's also risk and tolerance experimentation. So this is your knowing of how far you're willing to push your boundaries in exploration of a certain topic, a certain project. It helps to shape what you embrace and reject. So these 5 points, kind of side notes, are some things to be mindful of. If you want to know more about how to find your value, leave a comment. I'd love to get into more of that topic if that's something that you feel is going to be beneficial for your creative process. For those of you that maybe know what that looks like for you, it's something to come back to when you are starting a project, when you're in the middle of creating. So recognizing your don'ts. How do we do this? First and foremost, I think It's mostly about following your intuition. And I know that this can seem like a really broad, really subjective thing, which it is, but your intuition is your feeling, your sensing, and your knowing of when something feels aligned. It feels good. This is how you will know if something doesn't feel aligned, doesn't feel good, or is not quite the right medium, style, or approach to something. As much as it can be your yes, your no's and your don'ts will actually feel much more strong when you are following and listening to your intuition. Let me give you an example. Over the years, I have struggled to find and understand what my personal style is for my clothing, my aesthetics, and the things that I like. I, for a long time, have gravitated towards liking what a bohemian style looked like. I loved the patterns, I loved the flow, I loved kind of like the hippie, very effortless, free-spirited look of the bohemian style. When it came to me actually wearing these clothes or items of clothing that looked more bohemian, I found it very difficult to wear those clothes. I found it very difficult to feel good in that clothing, in those styles and those looks. It didn't quite fit my personal aesthetic of what I envisioned. As much as I loved how it looked and appeared and looked on other people, on my body and on me physically, it just didn't have the same effect. Also, I've been working on creating some jewelry. This is kind of a little side project, another one that I've been working on and experimenting with. One of them, and how I kind of want to use it, is working with and creating chainmail pieces of jewelry. Most of the aesthetics of chainmail that I have seen, to me, looks a little bit more alternative, a little bit more edgy. I really like it. I like that aesthetic. I like how it looks. I like how it appears on other people. But as you can see, even by the way that I'm dressed, that isn't my style. I wouldn't necessarily wear pieces of chainmail that particularly look a little bit more edgy. Basically, what I'm saying is now thinking about how I want to create jewelry and how I want to put together pieces of jewelry using chainmail, I'm going to try and incorporate a little bit more of my personality and the things that I like into something that looks a little bit more alternative, but will be with my own taste, my own aesthetics. What that's going to look like, I don't know yet, but I'm working on that. That is something that I am enjoying trying to figure out what that looks like for me. But what I know is that bohemian style aesthetic doesn't work for me in wearing. That isn't my style. And chainmail, kind of alternative, edgy look is also not my style. So every no is a clue in pointing you to what is lighting you up, which is so fascinating that you can pay attention to that and it'll bring you closer to the things that you want. How do we twist the no's into heck yes, like that's what I want? This is where we start to ask ourselves a little bit more questions. We're trying to refine, so we ask some more questions to start to define if this is a no, then what does my yes look like? If I don't want bohemian aesthetic, what do I actually want? What excites me? What aligns with my values, my style, my aesthetic, and my voice? What are those things that do make me light up? I wanted to share a few examples of other creators that have a very distinctive, unique style, aesthetic, and way that you can differentiate that is their work. As soon as you look at it, as soon as you hear something, you know it belongs to that person. This is how your own taste and aesthetic develops. That's actually what you want in your work. You want to be able to have people know that is so-and-so's work. I can tell. It's just the way that it looks. It's the way that it sounds. It's the way that it is presented. My first example is Quentin Tarantino. If you've seen any of his movies, the most popular one is Pulp Fiction. You will see that he has a very bold and unmistakable voice. His movies really lean towards his taste, what he loves, and he rejects safe formulas. He really steps outside of what typical movies look like, which is why you can really distinguish his movies from other ones. There's usually a certain aesthetic in the coloring or the editing of the movie. So there's a certain look. Maybe it's a little bit darker, or there's flashes of color. Maybe the way his panning, he pans the scene of a room. There's certain things that really make his movies so unique and entertaining to watch. Another creator is Christopher Nolan. He's a director as well. I really love Christopher Nolan's movies. They are inventive. He really expands what you can think to understand. Not only is the movie beautifully made, but the concepts and the plots of the movies go really deep, and they really make you think outside the box, which I find amazing. His movies have also kind of a tone or almost a dream-like, another world vibe to them, like Inception, Tenet, and I believe Dark Knight, which is the Batman movie. Amazing, amazing movies. So you can really see that his aesthetic, the things that he creates, really are reflective of his creative vision. The last creator is not a director. She is a singer. I'm talking about the beautiful Gwen Stefani. She started in a band, no doubt, the only female in that band. She had a certain aesthetic, the way that she dressed, she looked, she was at the front of the band singing. Her voice is very unmistakable, and she translated what she kind of had at the beginning with No Doubt to almost elevate it into her own aesthetic that she then created a clothing brand with, Lamb. And it is, again, very unmistakable that it is her vision, her creativity, her style that has evolved. And even though she's exploring different mediums, her signature style translates into these different areas, which I find so fascinating as an artist who also works in many mediums. I think that's a great example of how your style, how your yeses can translate into many different facets of your life, of your work, which is amazing. Seeing what they reject and what they embrace makes it clear that being able to grasp your yeses really do come from knowing the things that you don't want. So how do we start to define what are those things that we want then? Ultimately, trial and error. You have to try even taking small actions in your work to define what those yeses and nos are. Test small experiments on your emerging wants, mini projects, mini creative sprints, the things that you want to do, that you want to engage with. Try testing out little ways that you can really define for yourself. This is a hell yes. This is a, I'm not really sure about that. I don't think it's going to work with what I want to do, with what I want to see here. It's not quite fitting in. Adjust and remix. Continually come back to certain aspects of a project and ask yourself, is there a way that I can make this more aligned? Is there a way that I can maybe take this piece out and put it over here and maybe add something to it that will be more of a yes for me? Or this is really a no, but there's a piece missing here. So how can I replace it, or how can I move things around in order to make it a yes? There are ways that you're going to be adjusting and refining and remixing the things that you're already working on. It's more about your wants evolving with you. You're going to learn more what you want by doing more things, by trying and experimenting with more things. That is part of the process. That is how you come to have a specific taste, a specific thing that makes your work uniquely yours. Can you identify one don't in your creative work this week? Ask yourself, if I don't want this thing, what do I actually want to create? Do a tiny experiment that brings that want to life. Watch how clarity and momentum spark from one simple act of saying no first. Don't get stuck thinking that your no's are roadblocks, because they actually help you define the path to your yes. The way that I have been able to refine my taste, not just in my aesthetics and how I like to dress and what makes me feel comfortable and confident, but also to my work, my aesthetic and the way that I like things to look, has been with me knowing through my intuition, but also just from practice, the things that I don't like. I know that bohemian style doesn't fit with my aesthetic. So what I did was try different styles, different looks, to a place where something that I put on makes me feel good. That's really what you want. You want to feel good about the things that you're making. You want to feel good about the creative process of coming to every part of your project. Not just the beginning because you started, but in the middle as you're making it and making decisions of what is working and what's not. And obviously to the end of completion and feeling like you accomplished the thing that you set out to do from the beginning. That whole process and being able to express yourself clearly, authentically, and truly aligned with who you are is such an amazing feeling that I hope that all of you get to feel or continually get to feel in your work. It is something that I desire for myself all the time. And some projects, I will stop working on them and come back to them later because they didn't quite feel right. So instead of pushing through to try and make something that isn't feeling right, I'll leave it and come back to it another time with fresh eyes, with a fresh perspective, to see if I can define more clearly what my yeses are and what my don'ts are, what my no's are. Because that is what really is going to lead me and you further into your project coming to life, your work being uniquely yours, which is so beautiful. And I personally really do love the process of when something feels so good and I'm like, yes, this is really how I want to express myself through this medium. This is what I envisioned in my mind and it's come to life. It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling. Thanks so much for listening to the end. I appreciate you being here, going through this process of recording and learning what even my don'ts are in what I record, what I edit out is so valuable for me, and I hope that you find value in it as well. If you like this episode, please consider subscribing, following, liking, and sharing my work. It really does help me to get my episodes out there to other people that might be wanting to find more ways to be more creative, to step into their creative process and work, which is what I really hope for everyone. That is why I made this podcast to begin with. I hope you all have an amazing day and week. Thanks again. Keep creating. We'll see you next week. Bye.